Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. I'm glad you guys are all here. I know I'm certainly glad I'm here. I never feel more alive than when I'm sharing the miracle of God's recovery in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous that I discovered in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what we're here to share together today. As we always do, we will kick off with the set aside prayer. It goes a little something like this. Sing along if you know the words. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And we've got some new folks on the line tonight who have never been to the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study, and I'm very glad to have you guys all here joining us. We have a tradition here at the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study, as it is called the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study. I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first of all, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. All right, brothers and sisters, the book tells us we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of the tradition and custom of the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study, everyone who will, please put one hand up like this. And everybody, please put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. All right, man, we absolutely insist on enjoying life here in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to have fun here tonight. It's entirely optional, but it's highly recommended. I strongly suggest. I'm a fundamental member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think if you don't have fun, you're going to go damn mental. Fundamental, man, fundamental. So let's talk about the Fourth Dimension Big Book Study a little bit. As I said, my name is Kevin Olson. I am a recovered alcoholic. My sobriety date, as it indicates in my little panel there, is February 18th, 2009. So I've been sober for 16 years. Anyone who doesn't want to do that math. My home group is the Primary Purpose Group of Calgary, Alberta. My sponsor is a man by the name of Alan Bernstein, who is from a group in Los Angeles called the Pacific Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. That was founded by a man named Clancy Immisland. And you guys are going to hear me talk about Clancy a great deal. Clancy was my grand sponsor. And Alan was sponsored by Clancy for 22 years before he passed. And Clancy was the founder of the Pacific Group. And I am one of the founders of our group here in Calgary, the Primary Purpose Group. Years ago, I started teaching this big book study. And I've been teaching this study for about the same amount of time that I've been sober in AA. I was sober for a period of time before that, and I learned a lot about the big book. And in 2009, I started teaching this big book study. I've been doing this study for about 16 years now. And the real kind of genesis behind this big book study was I had some of my sponsees come to me and ask, Kevin, can you teach us how to teach this book to other people? Okay, because we had kind of already been through the work. And so that was kind of the original beginning of this big book study, was teaching my sponsees how to teach this book and how to do this work with someone else, and how to take our sponsees through through this book. And so a couple things that I want to share with you right now. I'll just share this slide very quickly. The transition that I've learned that I need to make in Alcoholics Anonymous, and really kind of, as I said, the theory behind this study is that I need to make a transition from being a taker in AA to being a giver in AA. This is the transition, okay? And this transition, guys, is really the fundamental foundational stone of this big book study. As we are going through this, I always encourage you to consider looking at the information you're being given, not as just what's in it for me and how does this apply to my life, but always be thinking about how can I take this information and use it to help someone else, okay? I have been taught, and I believe strongly that our main purpose in life is to be of maximum usefulness, maximum help to others, okay? And this is the transition that we need to make in Alcoholics Anonymous, from being a taker to a giver. And that's, as I said, that's the real foundation. That was the beginning of this big book study, is teaching others, teaching all of you, not just how to achieve sobriety in your own life, but how to take this work that we're going to do together and share it with someone else. Because what I believe, and I have been taught, is that we don't really start growing spiritually until we get our first sponsee, until we start working with others closely and intensely, is what the book says. Intensive work with other alcoholics. Prior to that, the first 11 steps will keep us sober. Yes, we will achieve sobriety for sure. But I don't believe we really start growing spiritually until we start working with others, okay? And so the foundation of this study will always be not just what's in it for me, but how can I take this information and be of usefulness and service to others, the still suffering alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, you may be here and you may be new, and you may be saying to yourself, hey, I'm the still suffering alcoholic, and that's fine. For a period of time, if you're here and you're new, you need to be a taker for a period of time, okay? For like the next 45 minutes or so, okay? You can be a taker. And then very, very quickly, very rapidly, I believe if this transformation is going to happen to me, that transformation begins with me trying to be of service and use to someone else. And that's why at my group, as in the Pacific group, that we are, our group, Primary Purpose Group, really grew out of the Pacific group. Maybe I'll get into that story another time, but we're big on service commitments, okay? Because I believe in Alcoholics Anonymous, when we're new, prior to having the spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps, the thing that will keep me sober in the very early days is commitment to a home group and a feeling of usefulness and purpose and giving back and making this transition from being a taker to a giver in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was a taker in AA for years, okay? Because I'm a something for nothing guy. I've always been a something for nothing guy. I'm a alcoholic only child who was spoon fed, my life on a platter my whole life, and I've just taken and taken and taken. Okay, and that's how I was when I was using. Give me the bottle, put it on my tab, front me the dope, I'll pay you later. And I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I bring that same mentality. Give me the sparkle in your eye, and give me that smile, and give me the peace that you have, and give me that line of sponsees that you have behind you, and give me the 10 years sobriety, and then I'll start doing the work. Okay? And it doesn't work that way in AA. I can't run game on God. I can't jive God. Okay? This transition can happen. It can happen very quickly, but I need to start making the transition. I need to start giving back. Okay? And that's the magic in AA, is that when I start giving back, all of the promises start coming true in my life. Okay. So anyway, guys, that's the bottom line. This is kind of the foundational stone of this big book study, making this transition from being a taker to a giver. And as you're receiving this information during the study, I implore you to not just be thinking about what's in it for me, but how can I start presenting this information to others, okay? So foundationally, if anyone here in the study has ever been to a Joe and Charlie Big Book study, a lot of what you're going to hear in this study is going to sound very familiar. Okay, the basic foundation, you know, for me, I was around Alcoholics Anonymous for like 5 years, in and out of AA, continually getting drunk over and over and over. And it wasn't for lack of going to meetings. Okay, I attended meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. It was not for lack of going to meetings. It was from a lack of doing actual spiritual work and getting involved in the 12 steps with a sponsor as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. And the first person who ever really began to share this work with me was a man here in Calgary, Alberta, where I'm from, called Cowboy Ray. And Cowboy Ray started teaching the Big Book in the 80s, and he had learned it directly from these guys, Joe and Charlie. And when I got sober, like Joe and Charlie Big Book studies were like hard to come by. Okay. They were, you know, you would get like a set of tapes from Joe and Charlie, and they were like a sacred thing. Any old timers on the call remember, like, you get like a set of tapes, and they were like, now you can go find a Joe and Charlie Big Book study on YouTube. You can go find a Joe and Charlie Big Book study on Spotify. They probably have them now. Okay, they're very easy to come by, but that will comprise the basic foundation of this study over the next many weeks that we go through this work together. So Joe and Charlie will be the foundation. However, on top of that, in addition to that, I'm going to thread a lot of different things into it, a lot of different things that I've collected and have been important and meaningful to me in my life. And two of those individuals in particular are, as I said, Clancy I was my grand sponsor, but he's also, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know Clancy, he was probably one of the most prolific AA speakers on the planet when he was alive. He spoke all over the world. He founded the Pacific Group. He is an amazing member of Alcoholics Anonymous. To me, in my opinion, the 5 most important people in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous are Dr. Silkworth, Carl Jung. Although they weren't alcoholics, I think they were instrumental in our program. Then Bill Wilson, then Dr. Bob, and then number 5 for me is Clancy. That's how important he is to me. And I will share a lot of what I have learned from Clancy throughout this study. Clancy's sponsor was a man named Chuck Chamberlain. You will hear me talk a lot about Chuck C as well. In fact, that transition from being a taker to a giver is something that I learned from Chuck Chamberlain, from Chuck C. And to give you some indication on these guys, and I love to share this with my sponsees or anyone that is in my sponsorship lineage, as we like to say. I'm sponsored by Alan B., who was sponsored by Clancy for 22 years. Clancy was sponsored by Chuck C., and Chuck C., his second sponsor was Bill Wilson. So that's the sponsorship lineage all the way back to the history of AA. So I'm going to talk about Clancy a lot and Chuck C a lot. The basic foundation, the basic framework of this study, though, as I said, is the Joe and Charlie Big Book study. For anyone who is interested, I love this website that you'll see there, xa-speakers.org. Strongly suggest anyone who is interested go to xa-speakers.org and listen to some of the speakers there. You can hear original talks of Bill Wilson. You can hear original talks of Dr. Bob. You can hear original talks of Ebby Thatcher. And if you don't know who these guys are, hang with us for like about another 6 weeks. And we're going to do a deep dive into AA history. It's not boring. It's absolutely fascinating and really underlined to me and underscored how important this program is, and the meaning and the legacy and the heritage of this program, where we come from and what it really means, and what the level of authenticity in these men has been over the last many years. So you can go to that site, you can listen to Clancy, you can listen to Chuck, you can listen to all kinds of speakers from all over the world. And speaker tapes, speaker recordings really changed my life and changed my perspective on AA, and helped me to understand that AA was a much bigger thing than just some little church basement that I went to every Monday night here in Calgary. It was a worldwide global phenomenon, and there was a deep, rich, meaningful history behind it as well. And we're certainly going to get into that and share some of that together. And I guess a couple of other things that I want to say about it. Some will, they'll do a big book study and they'll say, okay, this big book study, this is a 12-week big book study, or this is a 16-week big book study, or whatever it may be. I don't ever put a limit on this study, because a lot of times it will become not just a weekly monologue of, the Kevin show, me getting up here and saying a bunch of stuff to you. It will be back and forth, okay? Particularly when we get into steps 4 and 5. One of the other things that I think is so richly important in terms of this study, so yes, Joe and Charlie, and yes, Clancy, and yes, Chuck Chamberlain, and yes, xa-speakers.org, and so on. But also we are going to thread into this my experience and your experience, okay? Particularly when we get to, well, step 2, we'll talk about God and how we come to God, and, if we're afraid of God, and if we're angry at God, and so on, okay? When we get to step 3 about making that decision, what does that mean for me? What did that mean for me? What does that mean for you? Really, when we get to step 4, that is where starting to share our own experiences is so important. Step 9, sharing our experiences and making amends. It will be yours and my study. And on that note, I don't like to say this is 14 weeks or 16 weeks. It used to run about 14 weeks when it was a 2-hour study. And now, as you may know, it's an hour long. So I think Shiva actually did the math. I think the last time it was 25 weeks. Okay. And one of the other things about this study that I will do is, if we talked about step 10 last week and we're on step 11 this week, for example, now we're not tonight, we're starting over from the very beginning. But if we were on, say, 10 last week and we're on 11 this week, I don't just dive into step 11. We'll do a little bit of review on step 10 and then move into step 11, okay? When we are on step 12, we'll do a little bit of review on 11 and then get into 12, okay? And so this study has come to mean a lot for a lot of people over many, many years. And I don't think it has come to mean more to anyone than it does to me. This study, being here and sharing this work with you guys, has saved my life many times. Okay, some of you know me as friends in AA, and some of you will know over the last 2.5 years, I have been well, our book says certain trials and low spots is what the book says. All right, and I want you guys to know, I mean this sincerely. Being here and sharing this work with you guys has come to mean more to me than you will ever know. And I truly believe, had it not been for this study on many Tuesday nights and being here and having that responsibility, having that commitment, having that purpose to be here and share this with you guys, has meant as much to me as I know it does to some of you. So thank you for that. And another thing I like to say, some big book studies, if you go and you attend them, will have homework. Okay, there's homework to do. So I'm going to send you home. You're going to do this stuff and you're going to come back. And what would happen to me, because I'm an undisciplined alcoholic, filled with fear and self-centeredness and depression and all that good alcoholic stuff, I wouldn't do my homework. And then I would not come to the big book study because I didn't do my homework, because I was living in guilt and shame. Brothers and sisters, I'm here to tell you there's no homework here. I don't care what you did throughout the week between this Tuesday and next Tuesday. Just come here. That's all that matters. Just come here. I have seen magic happen. I have seen supernatural transformations. There's Ben. Ben, yeah. I mean, I've never met Ben. He lives in O'Leary, Ohio. I love this man. Okay. And Ben is a guy. Ben, I'm going to have you, if you would, I'm going to have you say a few words, because I know this study has come to mean a lot to you, and I know you talk about it a lot. So, so I'm going to ask Ben to say a couple words about what the Fourth Dimension Big Book study and what this book and what this work has meant to him. But it does not matter. There's no homework. There's no right. There's no wrong. Okay. You just come here. There will be some participation. Okay. The most important part when we tell our own experiences is going to be in step one. We're going to share our own cycles of alcoholism as we learn them in the doctor's opinion. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. Okay. Participate as you can. And just know there's a real unique community and a real unique fellowship and a real unique fourth dimensional transformation that happens here in this study. And I've had the privilege of watching it happen before my very eyes. So Ben, do you want to, I know you love this study and you're very vocal about it in your own, in Ohio. Do you want to say a couple things about it?
Sure, Kevin. I'll say a few words. Thank you for the honor of being able to speak here. I started this big book study when I was in like my second week of sobriety. I was only sober maybe 14 days. My sponsor, Bob Mazer, come to this meeting, and he thought that I could, benefit from coming to the study. So I started to come to the study, and being here and the information that I've learned from you and from Brad and it's just helped me understand the big book more. It's helped me understand how to apply it in my life better. It's helped me understand how I can share it with other people. There were some issues with me. I understood the big book, but I didn't know how to articulate it to other people. And in coming here, you've helped me understand it to a point where then I can help someone else understand it. And I think that was the missing link in my sobriety, was understanding the big book and then being able to understand how to share it with another human being so that they could understand it. So this big book study has been pivotal in my recovery. I share the meeting information with everybody I meet in Ohio, in Elyria, Ohio. My girl works in this field, and I gave her the information for it, so she passes it along to her clients at what she does. And I can't say enough about it. And when I first started, you told me that it didn't matter if I came every week, but when I came for when I got my first year, for me to come back and let you know. And I told you I will be here every week for my first year, and I did my very best to be able to hold myself accountable to that, man. That's how much this meeting has begun to mean to me, man. I love it. I love all of you guys. I love seeing all the people from around the world and talking with all of those guys before the meeting and after. Like, there's just hands down my favorite meeting of the week, bro. I love all of you guys. Thank you.
Well, we love you too, Ben. Thank you very much. I couldn't have said it better myself. And the most important thing, as you guys said, as I kind of kicked it off, the most important thing is that Ben has learned, yes, how to apply it to his own life, but what's even more important, he's learned how to teach it to others, okay, in a way that they can understand. And that's the magic. A little while ago in AA, we just came out with this. It's called the Plain Language Big Book. Anybody read the PLBB yet? The Plain Language Big Book? Yeah, I've certainly given it a little spin. And I don't know, man, for me, it just misses something, man. this book becomes like poetry. This is musical. I believe that this book was divinely inspired. I believe that God wrote this book through the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. And I believe that because the people who wrote it, Bill Wilson was really the guy who held the pen to write it out, but it was reviewed by the first 100 members. None of them knew enough to be able to write this book. None of them. Bill Wilson himself was like 4 years sober. Okay, and then you get to be 4 years sober and you realize, like, I don't quite know enough to write a book yet. I believe that this book was divinely inspired and that this book is a spiritual vortex, and that as long as I'm sitting with this book open, magic pops out of this book. Okay, recovery is contained in the first chapters of this book, the first 164 pages of this book. Miracles happen, lives change, and let's get into that miracle and talk about it a little bit. Let's dive into it, guys. Let's get the book open now. Brad is in New Zealand. Brad is not able to join us tonight. Ben, do you feel comfortable? Would you want to read for us tonight?
Yeah, I'll read for you.
Okay, that would be excellent. I appreciate it, guys. So one of the first things that I want to point out is what the name of this book is. What is the name of this book? Okay, the title is on there. You notice it doesn't say Big Book. It says Alcoholics Anonymous. So for anyone who doesn't know, the name of this book, as odd as this might sound, the name of this book is Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, and what I want everyone to know and to understand, to really just begin to highlight the importance of this book in our fellowship, is that prior to our fellowship having the name Alcoholics Anonymous, we were known as the drunk squad of the Oxford group. Okay, now you may not know what the Oxford group is yet, but you will. Hang with us for a few weeks. Ben knows what the Oxford group is now because he came to this study. He knows what the Oxford group is. Okay, so the drunk squad of the Oxford group in April 10th, 1939, published a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And from this book, our fellowship got its name. So we of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you are a member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, just know that Alcoholics Anonymous, our fellowship, is named after this book, not the other way around. We used to be a book that gave rise to a fellowship, okay? And now what I see more and more is that we're a fellowship that every once in a while still happens to have a book, okay? I've been to AA meetings, brothers and sisters, where there was not even a big book in the room. You know what I'm saying? Okay? I think this book one of these days is actually gonna catch on in AA. I think people are really gonna get into this book. Okay? And what I wanted to just point out is that in 1939, there was no Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. There was one thing, there was a book. And people got a copy of this book. And from the strength and the power within this book, they were able to achieve recovery from alcoholism. They were able to take actions that got them connected to a power that helped them and allowed them, the power allowed them to recover from the necessity to have to drink, okay? From the power of this book. And so that's what we're going to get into right now. We're going to talk about April 1939 when this book was first released. With that, I'll hand it over to my buddy Ben. We are on page XI, okay? So we're in the italics, we're in the Roman numerals. You know, when I first started reading this book, I always started on page 1. And you start on page 1 in our book, and you'll start at Bill's story. And I started to read Bill's story, and man, I missed so much important information about the history of Alcoholics Anonymous and step 1, the disease concept of alcoholism contained in the doctor's opinion. So guys, brothers and sisters, let's go back to the preface page XI, Roman numeral 11. This is the third edition of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm reading from a third edition right now, but the preface will be similar. Ben, over to you.
All right, I have the fourth edition, so it starts off with the fourth edition on XI.
Very good.
Preface. This is the fourth edition of the Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April 1939, and in its following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. The second edition, published in 1955, reached a total of more than 1,150,500 copies. The third edition.
Okay, so I want everyone just to make a note. We're gonna do a little bit of math, and we may not even get into it tonight, but I want everyone to make a note. Between 1939, when this book first was published, and when the second edition came out in 1955, 300,000 copies of this book were published. Okay, in that 16-year time span. So everybody make a note of that, because we're going to come back to that number in either later today or in the next week.
The third edition, which came off press in 1976, achieved a circulation of approximately 19,550,000 in all formats. Because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recover, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left largely untouched in the course of revisions made for the second, third, and fourth editions. The section called The Doctor's Opinion has been kept intact just as it was originally written in 1939 by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth, our society's great medical benefactor.
Okay, so since 1939, since the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous wrote this book, and that's what Cowboy Ray used to tell me. He used to say, Kevin, this book was written by the first 100 members of AA. And if I'm going to argue with something in the book, I'm really arguing with the first 100 sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Yes, Bill Wilson was the one doing the actual writing, but everything that he wrote was reviewed and edited and approved or disapproved by the first 100 members. Okay. And so if I'm going to argue with something in the book, I'm really arguing with those first 100 members. And because this book has helped such large numbers of men and women, millions of members of Alcoholics Anonymous worldwide to get sober, there's strong sentiment against any change being made to it. Now, for the first time ever, earlier this year, there was a small edition called the Plain Language Big Book, okay? And that is not a replacement for this book. That Plain Language Big Book is, I forget what they say exactly on it. This is like a helpful guide in addition to the book or something. Rob, can you look that up for me? What does it say on the Plain Language Big Book? What exactly does it say? It's a guide or an addition to the big book or something like that. But so Rob's going to look that up for us right now. But the real headline here, guys, is that both this book and the 12 and 12, in order for any change to be made to those books, at the General Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous in New York that occurs every year, there would have to be an approval by 2/3 of all of the groups in North America in order to make any change to the big book or to the 12 and 12, which is to, and if you know what it's like to get consensus on anything in your own home group, in one group, imagine trying to get 2/3 of all the groups in North America to try and agree on something. That is to say, there is strong sentiment against any changes ever being made in this book, because that's just not very likely to happen or for us to gain that kind of consensus. Rob, what does it say?
Okay, This
in the
book
plain
is
language
not
big
in,
book.
and it's in the chat so anybody can download it and keep it for yourself. This book is not intended to replace Alcoholics Anonymous. It is written to make the ideas presented in the big book easier to access. It is another tool for sharing the message of AA's program of recovery.
I'm saying this to Ben, I'll say it to everyone, is like, I think we lose a lot of magic in the language, and we lose the magic of having someone in a big book study explain it to us, man. I think that there's a lot of magic that happens in the understanding that occurs not just by, reading some easier, softer language, okay, but in sitting down and working through the hard language with someone else was so much more meaningful to me and so much more gratifying. Well, the first time I read through like Bill's story and someone started to explain the history, I felt like I was in on like a secret in AA, or like we agnostics, like, oh, that's what Professor Langley's flying machine is. Oh, that's, I loved learning the little nuances of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was very gratifying and just felt more meaningful to me. So anyway, let's carry on. Ben, back to you.
The second printing of the first edition added the appendix Spiritual Experience in the second edition. The appendices on AA tradition, the medical view and religious view of AA, the Lasker Award, and information on how to contact AA were added in the appendix on the Alcoholic Foundation was discontinued. But the chief change was in the section of personal stories, which was expanded to reflect the fellowship's growth. Bill's story, Dr. Bob's nightmare, and one other personal history from the first edition were retained intact. 3 were edited, and one of these was retitled. New versions of 2 stories were written with new titles. 30 completely new stories were added, and the story section was divided into 3 parts under the headings that are used now. In the third edition, Part 1, Pioneers of AA, was left unchanged. 9 of the stories in Part 2, They Stopped in Time, were carried over from the second edition. 8 new stories were added. In Part 3, they lost nearly all. 8 stories were retained, 5 new ones were added. The fourth edition includes the 12 concepts for world service and revises the 3 sections of personal stories as follows. 1 new story has been added to Part 1, and 2 that originally appeared in Part 3 have been repositioned there. 6 stories have been deleted. 6 of the stories in Part 2 have been carried over. 11 new ones have been added, and 11 taken out. Part 3 now includes 12 new stories. 8 were removed, in addition to the 2 that were transferred from Part 1. All changes made over the years in the Big Book, AA members' fond nickname for this volume, have had the same purpose, to represent the current membership of Alcoholics Anonymous more accurately, and thereby to reach more alcoholics. If you have a drinking problem, we hope that you may pause in reading one of the 42 personal stories and think, yes, that happened to me, or more important, yes, I've felt like that, or most important, yes, I believe this program can work for me too.
In that last line there, guys, yes, I believe. Yes, I believe. Isn't that all we're asked to do in step 2? Already we're asking, yes, I believe. Maybe I don't believe in the power of God yet, but maybe through reading these stories and hearing each other's stories, yes, we can believe that this program is a power greater than me, that this program can work for me too. All right. And you'll see, obviously, the only part of our book that ever changes are the stories in the back. Okay. And what's, I think, unique about that, or notable, it's not unique, it's notable about that, is that a very influential book in early AA and was very influential to Dr. Carl Jung in terms of developing his beliefs about step 2 as a psychiatrist, came from a man named William James. It came from a book called Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. How that book is very similar to our book is that they're structured the same way, which is to say the first portion of the book is text. It's a text, okay? This book has become the basic text for our fellowship, okay? And we just read that because this book has become the basic text for our society, this is not a novel. This is not a choose your own adventure book, okay? This is a textbook that is meant to be studied and applied in our lives and the lives of others, okay? This book is an owner's manual for the life of an alcoholic. If I suffer from this disease, this solution, this is my guidebook, okay? This is the flight plan, okay? In terms of how I'm going to live my life as an alcoholic. And that's what the first portion of the book is. It's that basic text. However, just like the book, Varieties of Religious Experience by William James, in the back of that book are several stories about various types of people and how they came to some type of spiritual experience. Not alcoholics necessarily, but I've read that book. And every single story of when a person has this type of spiritual conversion or spiritual transformation comes from some type of suffering. Not many people come to God on a winning streak, okay? Not many people come on a victory lap, okay? We come when we are at our lowest, and that's right where God will meet us, man, okay? I heard someone say the other day, God is not here for the righteous. God is here for the broken. God is here for the broken, man. And I don't know about y'all, but I came to AA and I was broken, and I have broken down again on the side of the road several times in AA, because life is life, man. Life is life. And every time I have broken down and I have reached out for the hand of AA and for the hand of God, they are always there. He is always there. AA has always been there for me. AA has always shown up for me, okay, in my life. And that's how we show up for each other, okay? And so by reading these stories, we can start to have an understanding of, yes, maybe I believe that this program can work for me too. So the basic text of our book, I believe, will never change. There is strong sentiment against any change ever being made to it. I told you what the mechanism is. 2/3 of every home group in North America would have to agree to it, and that is likely to never happen. The stories in the back talk about the transformation that we have, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. Okay? And the what happened is the hardest thing to explain. Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you guys know who Jordan Peterson is. He became famous over the last little while, university professor. He said a great thing. The evidence for the existence of a spiritual experience is irrefutable, but it is also inexplicable. Okay? It's hard to explain the what happened. And the best way to do it is by sharing our stories with one another. And that is the basic idea behind having stories that reflect the current membership. Why? So that we can reach more alcoholics. That's what it says. So we can reach more alcoholics. You know, Lois Wilson, Bill Wilson's wife, used to say, if we can't teach something to someone as a story, we shouldn't try to teach it at all. Okay? I'm not saying I wholly agree with that, but man, that struck me deeply, that we can convey more to each other with our stories than we can with any type of lecture or any type of scolding. Okay? And we can share these stories with each other and reach more alcoholics. Okay, with that said, Ben, let's go into forward to the first edition.
Forward to the first edition. This is the foreword as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book.
So I'm going to
For
point
them,
out, you've just seen the word recovered twice. And you may note that I introduced myself as I'm Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Okay. Our book uses the term recovered 20 times. 20 times. This book refers to us as a recovered alcoholic. Okay. And I was back and forth on this for a long time, guys. I'll tell you the truth about that. I used to think, Bill Wilson only ever referred to himself as an alcoholic. He didn't ever refer to himself as a recovered alcoholic, and so on. But somebody pointed out to me that introducing myself as a recovered alcoholic is the quickest way to summarize the power of this program and the transformation that can happen. I was an alcoholic and I am no longer an alcoholic. I no longer suffer from that disease today. I have recovered from what? A seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Okay? And we're going to talk about what the state of mind is and what the state of body is. Okay? The state of mind and the state of body. That is the crux of our problem. Now, is that to say that I don't still suffer from alcoholism? That I don't still suffer from difficult emotions and problematic thinking and crazy decisions and still, chaos in my life sometimes and fits of emotionalism? Yes, that still happens, of course. But as a result of the actions of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have today connected to a power that has allowed me to recover from the necessity to have to drink. I no longer suffer from the mental obsession or the physical allergy to alcohol, period. That, I believe, is what I mean when I say that I have recovered. And to show you how we have recovered is the exact purpose of this book. All right, back to you, Ben.
For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. It is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Being mostly business or professional folk, we would not well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation.
Okay, and that, brothers and sisters, in 1939 was almost beyond comprehension. Okay? What is an avocation? I'm sure our man Rob is probably putting the definition in the chat, okay? A vocation is a job that we do for money. An avocation is taken up in addition to one's work. It is something that we do. We don't do it for money, okay? So they would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation. At the end of the Great Depression in the 1930s, brothers and sisters, this was beyond comprehension. In fact, many people didn't believe it. And we'll talk about this next week, okay? People did not believe that these alkies were truly just doing this for free, okay? They did not believe it, okay? But now, as a result of the success of Alcoholics Anonymous worldwide, now we understand that our alcoholic work is an avocation, and it is something that we do for free and something that we do for fun. In fact, if we got paid for it, it wouldn't work, okay? The magic of Alcoholics Anonymous is that I care for you and you care for me, and we do it for nothing else than the care of one another, man, okay? And that we care about one another's suffering, because when I'm concerned with your suffering, I am no longer concerned for my own suffering, and I am therefore in a state of grace and a state of recovery. Okay. So that is how our alcoholic work is an avocation. All right. Back to you, Ben.
When writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellowship to omit his personal name, designating himself instead as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Very earnestly, we ask the press also to observe this request, for otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. We are not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. There are no fees or dues whatsoever. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. We are not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination, nor do we oppose anyone. We simply wish to be helpful to those who are afflicted.
Okay, so already here we can start to see the framework of the 12 traditions starting to be formed. Okay, now it wouldn't be for another few years, another 11 years, 1950, when the 12 traditions were accepted at the first General Service Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous in 1950 in Cleveland. Okay, when the 12 traditions were approved by the fellowship, and we'll talk more about that. But the one thing I like to point out here is Bill says we are not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. What he means, and he is very clear with his language as a failed night school lawyer. When he says organization, what he is talking about is a corporate structure. We do not have a corporate structure in AA. Okay. Our org chart in AA is very, very simple. Okay. The org chart is simply this. We are all have the same title, which is sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we all report to one boss. And who is that boss? G to the OD, baby. G to the OD. G Dizzle. That is it. Okay. That is it. That is the org chart. The highest level I can ever achieve in Alcoholics Anonymous is sober member of my own home group. That is it. Okay. We are not an organization in the conventional sense vis-a-vis CEO, senior vice presidents, middle managers, individual contributors. We don't have any of that. Okay. We are all sober member of AA, and we all have one boss, and that boss is God. That is how our organization works. Okay. Back to you, Ben.
We shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book, particularly from those who have commenced work with other alcoholics. We should like to be helpful to such cases. Inquiry by scientific, medical, and religious societies will be welcome. Alcoholics Anonymous.
All right. So April 10th, 1939, Big Book is published. It goes out into the world. And that was it. That was the foreword to the first edition. Okay. Now let's take a look and see what happened between 1939 and 1955. And tonight we're gonna finish up here, guys, right by 7 p.m. Okay. But I wanna connect some dots for you guys here in a moment. Just to kind of highlight something, then we'll be done for tonight. Back to you, Ben.
Forward to the second edition. Figures given in this forward describe the fellowship as it was in 1955. Since the original forward to this book was written in 1939, a wholesale miracle has taken place. Our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Already continues the early text. 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. 16 years have elapsed between our first printing of this book and the presentation in 1955 of our second edition. In that brief space, Alcoholics Anonymous has mushroomed into nearly 6,000 groups whose membership is far above 150,000 recovered alcoholic groups.
Woo, yeah! All right, let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. First of all, 150,000 recovered alcoholics. What kind of alcoholics are they? 100 recovered alcoholics. You with me on that, brothers and sisters? All right, recovered. 150,000 recovered alcoholics. So, what does it say? Wholesale miracle. Wholesale miracle has happened. Do you guys know what the life of an alcoholic was like prior to the publishing of this book? Do you know where we would be right now? All of us. If we were lucky, we would be dead. But that often didn't happen. What often happened is you would end up in jail, or worse, you would just be confined to an insane asylum. Okay? And I don't mean like detox or the treatment center for alcoholism and drug addiction and hurt feelings. Okay? I mean the insane asylum, man. Like, that's where they put us. That's where we lived. Okay? My grand sponsor, Clancy, and this is in the 1950s. Okay? In the 1950s, he was confined to the Texas State Insane Asylum after a very real suicide attempt. And he was given at that time what they called in the state of Texas the major series. And the major series was 64 electric shock treatments. 64 electric shock treatments. This is my grand sponsor prior to him getting sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. That is what you want to talk about a wholesale miracle. Now we all take it for granted. AA is there if I want it. If I don't want it, I'll go drink tonight. I'll go back to AA tomorrow. I haven't had to make a transition from being a taker to a giver because I can just sit and take and take and take and take and take. Meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, taking and taking and taking like a vampire, getting sober off the spiritual experience that other people have had, being a sponge, being a parasite in AA. And that's how I lived for a long time. Okay. What I want to point out, and the dots that I really want to connect, if you look back at the number I asked you guys to remember in the preface, between 1939 and 1955, in the preface, how many copies of the big book went out into the world? 300,000. Remember, I asked you to remember that number. Between 1939 and 1955, how many sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous were there? 150,000. And that means for every 2 books that went out, one of us stayed sober forever. Okay? And we're going to talk about these percentages more tomorrow, or next week rather. Okay? 300,000 copies of the book, 150,000 sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous between 1939 and 1955, when there were no meetings. There was nothing else to do other than the work in the book and then go find another alcoholic to get sober. Jim Cito lives here in Calgary. He's 70 years sober. As far as we know, and we've confirmed and been told that he is the longest term sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous on the planet. I have asked Jim. He got sober, and it'd be he's 70 years sober, so it'd be 1955 he got sober. Jim, what was AA like in Alberta in 1955? And he said there was 1 meeting a week that we went to. I said, whoa, what about 90 meetings in 90 days? How did you do 90 meetings in 90 days, Jim, if there's only 1 meeting to go to? He said, let me tell you the 3 things. Number 1, you prayed all the time. Number 2, you worked with other people like crazy. And number 3, you never, ever, under any circumstances, missed that meeting. Boom! 300,000 copies of the book, 150,000 sober alcoholics. Now, what's the next number? 1971, I think it was. 19,550,000 copies of the book. Do you think we have 10 million sober alcoholics around the world? Not even close. Not even close. It's because we've gotten away from the book, brothers and sisters. Okay? Started trying to stay sober on meeting-based sobriety. Okay? And the purpose of this study, what I believe, and the purpose of our home group, and any home group members who are here, I love you, and it's great to see you. Thank you for being here. We believe about getting back to, I like to say, I'm a 1935 to 1940 member of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is what we do. And I'm here to tell you, man, the guys that I sponsor, we go through this work, and close to, I'll say 50% of the guys that I work with and we go through this work stay sober. Okay. When we stay close to the book as a fellowship, miraculous things happen. Okay. And those numbers prove it out, man. 300,000, 150,000 sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I implore you, we're going to end now this 7 p.m. I'd always try to land the plane on time. Oh, we're 1 minute over now. Okay. I implore you to stay for the rest of this study, learn this work, do this work. As Ben said, go share this work with someone else, and amazing things will come to pass. Great events will come to pass for you and countless others. All right, brothers and sisters, that's it.